Ethan Walker never thought his life would change in a single evening. He was a simple man, someone who worked with his hands and liked quiet days. At 28, he lived in a small apartment above the garage he worked at. His days were filled with repairing cars, fixing engines, and sometimes taking long walks in the city streets when he wanted to clear his head. On one such evening, after finishing a long day of work, Ethan decided to walk through the old part of town. It was a place full of narrow streets, small shops, and vendors who sold odd items. He liked walking there because it felt different from the modern parts of the city. The air carried the smell of roasted nuts, spices, and sometimes incense burning in small bowls. As he walked, he stopped in front of a stall that caught his eye. The vendor was an old man with wrinkled skin, sharp eyes, and a crooked smile. On the table before him were many small objects: pendants, coins, bracelets, and rings. Most of them looked cheap, made of brass or copper, but some had strange shapes as if they came from another world. "Looking for something special?" the old man asked, his voice thin but confident. Ethan shook his head and smiled politely. "Just looking." His eyes, however, fell on a simple ring. It was not flashy like the others. It had no gemstones or fancy design. It was silver gray in color with a smooth surface, but when the light hit it, he thought he saw faint lines almost like patterns of stars. Something about the ring felt alive, as if it wanted to be noticed. The vendor leaned forward. "That one suits you," he said in a knowing tone. Ethan raised an eyebrow. It's just a ring," the old man chuckled. "Sometimes the simplest things have the greatest stories." Ethan hesitated. He was not the kind of person to believe in mysteries or magic. To him, life was practical: bills, work, sleep, and repeat. But something about the ring pulled him in. Almost without thinking, he asked, "How much?" The old man looked at him carefully, then said, "For you, just $10. It was cheap, almost too cheap." Ethan nodded, handed over the money, and slipped the ring into his pocket. He did not even try it on until he was back at his apartment later that night. The apartment was quiet, the faint hum of the city outside barely reaching through his window. Ethan dropped his keys on the table, set his jacket aside, and sat on the couch. He pulled out the ring and turned it in his fingers. The strange pattern seemed clearer now, glowing faintly like silver lines under the surface. "Strange little thing," he muttered. Without another thought, he slid the ring onto his right hand. The moment it touched his skin, he felt a sharp warmth, not painful but intense. The ring tightened slightly, fitting perfectly around his finger as if it had been made for him. His breath caught in his throat as thin lines of light spread from the ring, crawling across his hand like veins of fire. He gasped, trying to pull it off, but the ring refused to move. "Okay, this is not normal," he whispered. The glowing lines faded after a few seconds, but a faint mark remained, like a tattoo of circles and stars on his skin. His heart pounded. He stood up quickly, walked to the sink, and tried to soap the ring off, but it clung stubbornly. No matter how hard he pulled, it would not budge. He spent nearly half an hour struggling before finally giving up, his chest heaving with frustration. He stared at the strange marks on his hand. They looked beautiful in a way, like ancient symbols, but they filled him with unease. Shaking his head, he muttered, "I'm just tired. Maybe I'm imagining things." That night, Ethan lay in bed, but sleep did not come easily. When it finally did, his dreams were not his own. He saw landscapes that no human eyes had ever seen. Vast deserts with glowing blue sand, cities made of crystal towers reaching toward a purple sky, and rivers of light that flowed like living stars. Among these visions, he saw a figure standing tall and graceful. She wore armor that gleamed like polished stone, and her eyes glowed faintly, filled with a strength that both comforted and frightened him. She did not speak, yet he felt she was waiting for him. When Ethan woke, his sheets were damp with sweat. The morning sun shone through the window, but he still felt the weight of the dream. He looked at his hand. The ring was still there, and the faint glowing symbols seemed brighter in the sunlight. "This is crazy," he whispered to himself. He was about to get ready for work when something impossible happened. A soft hum filled the room, and suddenly in front of him, light gathered in the air, forming the shape of a person. In seconds, a tall figure stood in his living room, a hologram shimmering yet clear. It was the woman from his dream. Her voice was calm, steady, and strangely melodic. "At last the bond is complete." Ethan froze, his mouth open in shock. What are you?" She looked at him with an expression that seemed both curious and certain. I am Lyra of the Arthanai. You are now bound to me. Ethan shook his head quickly. Bound? No, wait. This is some kind of mistake. I just bought a ring from a street vendor. Lyra tilted her head, studying him as though he were a puzzle. The bond ring does not make mistakes. It chooses, and it has chosen you. Ethan laughed nervously, though his throat was dry. Marriage bond. Look, I don't even know you. I'm human. This is not real. Her expression softened slightly. It is real. The bond is ancient, a union between two souls. It links us beyond distance, beyond worlds. Now that it is complete, neither of us can escape it. Ethan staggered back, his mind spinning. He looked at the glowing marks on his hand and then at her. She seemed so real, though he knew she was only a projection. No, I didn't agree to this. I don't want this. Lyra's voice grew firmer. The bond does not require your understanding, only your presence. Whether you accept it or not, it exists, and others will know. Others? Ethan repeated. Almost as if to answer, the room shook faintly. The glass on the table rattled. Ethan rushed to the window and looked outside. His heart froze. High above the city, hidden behind clouds but partly visible, were shapes, massive dark ships. They hovered silently, but their size made them impossible to ignore. Ethan's voice cracked as he whispered, "Those are not airplanes." Lyra's projection appeared beside him, her face calm but serious. "They have come. The bond has been detected. You are no longer hidden, Ethan Walker. The galaxy will soon know that a human has been chosen." Ethan stumbled back from the window, his mind racing. His life, once simple and quiet, had just been pulled into something far greater than he could ever imagine. The ring on his finger glowed softly, pulsing in rhythm with his racing heart. And Ethan realized the truth. There was no going back. The morning after the ships appeared, Ethan's life turned upside down. He woke with a heavy feeling in his chest, as if the strange ring was no longer just on his hand but inside him. Every movement reminded him of it. The glowing lines on his skin pulsed faintly, as if alive. He sat on the edge of his bed, staring at his hand. "What did I get myself into?" he whispered. The hologram of Lyra appeared again, shimmering like morning light. She looked calm, though her eyes were sharp. "You must prepare yourself. The bond cannot remain hidden. Already others are searching for you." Ethan rubbed his forehead. "I'm not prepared for any of this. I'm just a mechanic. I fix cars, not alien marriage bonds." Lyra did not smile. "You may not understand, but your role is important now. My people will protect you, but there are those who will see you as a weapon or as a prize." Ethan let out a shaky laugh. "A prize? I don't feel like a prize. I feel like I'm in the middle of a nightmare." Before Lyra could answer, his phone buzzed. The screen showed an unknown number. Against his better judgment, he picked it up. "Mr. Ethan Walker," a stern voice asked. "Yes," Ethan said cautiously. "This is Special Security Division. We need you to come with us immediately." "It's about the unusual event last night." Ethan froze. He glanced at Lyra, who was watching silently. His heart raced. I don't know what you mean." "Do not play games," the voice snapped. "We know. Stay where you are." The call ended. Within minutes, there was a loud knock on his door. Ethan opened it to find 3 men in dark suits, flanked by soldiers in uniform. They didn't wait for him to speak. "Mr. Walker, you need to come with us," one said. Ethan looked back at the glowing hologram of Lyra. They couldn't see her, but he knew she was watching. His chest tightened. "Do I have a choice?" "No," the man said firmly. The ride was silent. Ethan sat in the back of a black vehicle flanked by soldiers. Through the window, he saw people on the streets pointing to the sky where faint shadows of alien ships hovered. Fear filled the city. Everyone knew something was happening, but no one understood what. They brought him to a secure government facility outside the city. Long fences, cameras, and armed guards surrounded the place. Inside, bright lights and cold steel walls greeted him. They led him to a room with a long table. A group of officials sat waiting. A man in a gray suit, clearly the leader, leaned forward. "Ethan Walker," the man said. "You've been identified as the person connected to last night's event. Tell us everything you know." Ethan sat down nervously. "I don't know much. I bought a ring. It stuck to my hand, and then the ships appeared." The officials exchanged uneasy looks. "Show us," one demanded. Ethan raised his hand. The glowing symbols lit faintly under the room's light. Gasps filled the room. "What is it?" Ethan asked. "What's happening to me?" The man in the gray suit stared at him. That ring is not of this world. You've become some kind of signal. These ships, they're here for you. Ethan shook his head. I don't want this. I didn't ask for it. The official's voice grew sharp. Want it or not, you're involved. And if you're a danger to Earth, we need to know. Before Ethan could answer, the air shimmered. Lyra appeared, her tall form glowing in the center of the room. Soldiers raised their weapons instantly, but their leader held up a hand. Ethan's heart leapt. Wait. Don't shoot. She's not here to hurt anyone. Lyra's voice was calm but strong. Your world is unprepared. Ethan Walker is bound to me by the Arthanai marriage bond. That makes him protected under ancient law. Any attempt to harm him will be seen as an act of war. The officials were stunned. The man in the gray suit leaned back slowly. Who are you? I am Lyra of the Arthanai, she answered. We are a people beyond your stars. The bond is sacred. It links our souls. It cannot be broken, Ethan whispered. I told you. I didn't choose this. Lyra turned her gaze to him. The bond chose you. The room fell silent. Over the next few days, Ethan was kept inside the facility. He was questioned repeatedly. Doctors examined the ring, scanned it, even tried to cut it, but every attempt failed. The bond resisted all interference. Worse, Ethan began to feel sick when Lyra's projection was not near. His chest ached, his head spun, and he felt a heavy emptiness. When Lyra appeared, the pain eased, you see? Lyra explained when Ethan asked about it. The bond ties our lives together. Separation weakens us. You cannot remain far from me for long. Ethan groaned. So I'm stuck with you forever? Her expression softened slightly. Not stuck, joined. Ethan laughed bitterly. Joined? I didn't even go on a date first. Lyra tilted her head, confused by the human humor. Dates, I do not understand. Ethan sighed, shaking his head. Never mind. Despite the strange situation, he began to feel pieces of her emotions through the bond. Flashes of determination, hints of sadness, and sometimes a strange warmth. He realized she was as bound as he was. Neither of them had chosen this. Meanwhile, the world outside was changing quickly. News channels reported sightings of alien ships across the globe. Governments demanded answers. Panic spread. The officials at the facility told Ethan, if they want you, you're a danger to Earth. We cannot risk keeping you here. Ethan's stomach sank. So what then? What do you expect me to do? The man in the gray suit leaned forward. Leave. If they want you, go with them. Take this, whatever it is, away from Earth. Ethan's hands trembled. Leave? You want me to go into space with aliens I don't even know? Lyra's voice cut in. He cannot remain here. The bond will kill him if he stays apart from me, and Earth will suffer if other factions come to claim him. The official's face was grim. It's the only way. For Earth's safety, for your survival. Ethan looked at Lyra. Her glowing eyes met his, calm but unyielding. His chest tightened. If I go, there's no coming back, is there? Lyra was silent for a moment before saying softly, your life will never be the same, but you will not be alone. Ethan closed his eyes. He thought about his simple apartment, his garage, his tools, his quiet walks through the city, all the ordinary pieces of his life. He thought about how easily he had picked up the ring, not knowing it would change everything. When he opened his eyes, his voice was steady. Fine, I'll go. But not because I trust any of this, I don't want Earth to suffer because of me. Lyra nodded, her expression unreadable. That night, under the cover of darkness, Ethan was taken to a remote airfield. Soldiers escorted him to a flat, empty plain where the air shimmered strangely. A beam of light descended and a sleek ship appeared hovering above the ground. Its surface was smooth like polished stone, with faint glowing patterns that reminded Ethan of the ring on his hand. A hatch opened, and a ramp extended. Lyra stood at the top, waiting. Her voice reached him even before he climbed. Come, Ethan Walker. The galaxy awaits. Ethan's legs felt heavy. He looked back one last time at the soldiers, the airfield, the Earth he had always known. His chest ached with fear and longing. Then, with a deep breath, he stepped forward and walked up the ramp. The hatch closed behind him, and the ship rose silently into the sky. Through a small window, Ethan saw Earth grow smaller below him, the blue and green planet shining in the darkness of space. His heart pounded, and his hand throbbed with the glow of the bond. He whispered to himself, "What have I done?" But deep inside, another feeling stirred, something he couldn't explain. A strange pull, not just fear but also curiosity. For the first time in his life, Ethan Walker was leaving Earth, and he knew nothing would ever be the same again. Ethan Walker had never imagined he would stand inside a starship. At first he expected something cold and mechanical, like the science fiction movies he had seen as a child. But Lyra's ship was nothing like that. Its halls were made of smooth crystal-like walls that shifted faintly with light, as if the ship itself was alive. The air smelled faintly of minerals and something sharp, not unpleasant but alien. The first time he stepped inside, his stomach twisted with nervousness. He whispered to himself, "I don't belong here." Lyra walked ahead of him, tall and graceful, her armor glinting under the soft lights. She looked back once, her glowing eyes steady. "The bond will guide you. You will adapt." Her calm voice did not comfort him. Ethan touched the ring on his hand, feeling its steady pulse. Every time the ship shifted, every time a strange hum echoed through the walls, the bond vibrated faintly, as if it were reminding him he was tied to something much larger than himself. The first days aboard the ship were overwhelming. Ethan was shown a small chamber that served as his living space. The walls could change color when he touched them, the bed adjusted itself to his shape, and the ceiling could project the stars outside. It was incredible, but it made him feel even more out of place. Meals were another challenge. The food was not like anything on Earth. Some dishes looked like glowing fruits, others were strips of soft material that dissolved on his tongue. To his surprise, most of it tasted good, though he sometimes longed for something simple like a cheeseburger. Lyra, however, was focused on something else. She insisted that Ethan needed to learn to use the bond. "You are not just carrying it," she explained one evening in the training hall. "It flows through you. The bond amplifies emotions, thoughts, and actions. Without control, you will harm yourself or me." Ethan frowned, wiping sweat from his forehead after failing another exercise. He was supposed to focus on a glowing sphere in the center of the room and will it to move using the bond, but every time he tried, the sphere flickered and stayed still. "I'm no good at this," he muttered. Lyra's expression remained calm, but he sensed her faint frustration through the bond. "You give up too quickly. Humans, you lack patience." That annoyed Ethan. "Hey, patience? I spent 3 hours staring at a ball that doesn't move. I think I've been patient enough." To his surprise, her lips curved slightly, almost like a smile. "Your stubbornness may serve you better than patience." Something in her tone made his chest tighten. He shook his head quickly, trying to focus. As days turned into weeks, Ethan slowly improved. The bond allowed him to sense Lyra's emotions more clearly. At first, it frightened him to feel things that were not his own. Her sharp focus during training, her guarded caution when speaking with others over the ship's comms, and sometimes in quiet moments, a heavy sadness she never showed on her face. He realized she carried burdens he could not yet understand. And though he wanted to ask, he often stayed silent, unsure if he had the right. But something else began to happen too. The bond worked both ways. Lyra sometimes reacted to his emotions without him speaking. Once, when he grew frustrated at himself for failing an exercise, she paused and said quietly, "Do not measure yourself by one attempt. I feel your doubt. It is unnecessary." Ethan blinked. "You can feel that?" She looked away, her voice softer. "Yes, and I feel when you laugh at your own thoughts too." He groaned, covering his face. "Great. So you know every embarrassing thing that goes through my head." Her small smile returned. "Not everything. Only enough." Despite the awkwardness, a strange closeness grew between them. It was not romance, not yet, but a bond of respect, of two lives tied together against their will, learning to move as one. One day, Lyra informed him they would be leaving the ship for the first time. "There is a council meeting," she said. "Representatives of several worlds will gather. They will want to see you." Ethan nearly dropped the piece of glowing fruit he had been eating. "Me? Why? I don't belong in alien politics." Her eyes glinted. "You are part of the bond. They will not accept me without you." Ethan sighed heavily. This just keeps getting better. The council chamber was nothing like anything Ethan had ever seen. The ship docked at a massive station orbiting a giant star. Its halls were filled with beings of every shape, tall, short, feathered, scaled, glowing, mechanical. Ethan felt his heart pound as he walked behind Lyra, trying not to stare too much. He felt like a child lost in a crowd. When they entered the main chamber, he froze. The room was vast, with tiered platforms filled with alien rulers and diplomats. Some were twice Lyra's size. Others floated in spheres of liquid. Some hissed through sharp teeth. The air buzzed with strange voices. At the center, a council leader raised a hand. Lyra of the Arthanai, and the human. All eyes turned to Ethan. He swallowed hard. His legs felt weak. The leader's voice echoed. Explain. Why has the bond chosen one from such a primitive world? Murmurs spread through the chamber. Words in different languages. But the bond allowed Ethan to sense their meaning. Doubt, mockery, disbelief. Ethan whispered to Lyra, "They hate me." Her voice was calm, steady. "Stand tall. Do not let them see weakness," the council leader continued. "The bond is sacred. It unites great houses, great powers. But this human? This cannot be accepted. He must be surrendered." Ethan's stomach dropped. He wanted to protest, but fear locked his tongue. Then he felt something through the bond. Lyra's anger. Sharp, controlled, but powerful. She stepped forward. "The bond is not yours to question. It is ancient law. Ethan Walker is chosen. He will not be surrendered." The chamber erupted in shouts. Some voices agreed, others demanded resistance. Ethan's hands trembled. He wanted to shrink away, but then something strange happened. He noticed a shadow moving above. A figure aiming a weapon from the balcony. Without thinking, he shouted, "Lyra! Up there!" The assassin fired, but Lyra was already moving, her blade flashing as she blocked the strike. The chamber filled with chaos. Guards rushed in. Alarms sounded. Through the bond, Ethan felt her focus, her strength, and, shockingly, she felt his warning before he spoke. Their connection had saved her. The assassin was captured, dragged away, hissing in a strange tongue. The council chamber fell silent again, all eyes on Ethan. The leader's voice was colder now. "Perhaps this human is not as weak as he appears." Whispers spread again, this time with a new tone. Not just mockery, but curiosity. Ethan stood frozen, heart pounding. He had not planned anything. He had only acted. Yet in that single moment, the way the galaxy saw him had begun to change. Later, back on the ship, Ethan collapsed on his bed, exhausted. His hand still shook. "I almost got killed," he muttered. Lyra stood at the doorway, her expression calm but her voice softer than usual. "You saved me. Without your warning, I would have fallen." Ethan sat up, rubbing his face. I didn't even think. I saw it and shouted." She stepped closer. "That is what makes you dangerous to them. You do not think like we do. You act. Instinct. It surprises them." He looked at her, trying to read her glowing eyes. "Is that a compliment?" Her lips curved faintly. "Perhaps." For the first time since he left Earth, Ethan felt something shift inside him. He was still scared, still confused, but he realized something important. He was no longer just a passenger. He was part of this, part of something much bigger than himself. And though the galaxy still doubted him, Ethan Walker knew one thing. He would not be ignored. The stars stretched endlessly outside the ship's windows, but Ethan Walker barely noticed. His mind was occupied with a single thought. The warlord had arrived. Reports from scouts confirmed it. A massive fleet of enemy ships was approaching Earth, intending to capture him and destroy any resistance. Ethan paced in the command room, his hands tight around the rail. The bond glowed faintly on his hand, pulsing in rhythm with his heartbeat. Lyra stood beside him, her armor shining under the soft lights. She was calm, her posture perfect, but through the bond, Ethan sensed her tension. "This is the largest fleet I've ever seen," he muttered. "How do we even fight them?" Lyra's eyes met his, glowing faintly. "We do not fight them like others. We use the bond. Together we can move faster, react quicker, and think as one. You have learned its strength. Now you must trust it, and trust yourself." Ethan swallowed hard. "Trust myself? I've been shot at, chased, and lectured by 1,000 aliens. Trusting myself seems hard." She tilted her head. "Hard is what humans do best. Fear will make you slow. Act, and you will surprise them." The ship descended toward Earth's orbit. Below, cities glimmered like tiny jewels under a fading sun. Ethan stared at the planet he had called home, feeling a mix of fear and determination. If they failed, the warlord would destroy everything. "Ethan," Lyra said, her voice steady, "remember the bond reacts to your instinct. I can guide, but the final decisions are yours. Ethan nodded, gripping the rail. He felt the pulse in his hand grow stronger, as if the ring itself was urging him forward. The first wave of enemy ships appeared, dark and angular, cutting through space like predators. Alarms echoed through the command room. The fleet opened fire. Lyra moved instantly, her movements fluid and precise. Ethan tried to follow, but at first he was slow, fumbling with the controls. The bond pulsed, then strengthened, guiding his reflexes. He saw flashes of her thoughts, where to move, what to avoid, and his hands acted before his mind could protest. For the first time, he felt a terrifying but exhilarating power. The bond amplified him, making him faster, sharper, more aware. Together, he and Lyra moved as one, dodging attacks, countering the enemy fleet with precision. The battle raged. Ships exploded in showers of sparks, and lasers cut through the void. Ethan's heart pounded, but he began to enjoy the flow. Each movement of Lyra's thoughts synced with his own instincts. They were no longer two separate beings. For a moment, they were a single force. "Ethan, concentrate on the central ship," Lyra said. "It carries the warlord. If we disable it, the others will retreat." Ethan nodded. He could see it now. A massive vessel at the center of the fleet, glowing with energy weapons and shields. He took a deep breath, and the bond pulsed with warmth, steadying him. Using a combination of instinct and the bond's guidance, Ethan maneuvered the ship closer to the warlord's flagship. Lyra's voice was calm but urgent in his mind. "Now, focus." He aimed the ship's main pulse weapon, a bright energy cannon designed to overload enemy shields. He hesitated, imagining the destruction, imagining the lives at stake. Then he remembered Earth below, the streets, the people who had never even known this battle was coming. He fired. The blast hit the flagship squarely. Shields flickered, then collapsed. Alarms blared on the enemy ship. Lyra's blade flashed across the control deck, disabling critical systems, while Ethan guided the ship to keep the enemy off balance. It was chaos, but they were in control. Inside the warlord's ship, the enemy commander was furious. "They are only human," he hissed. "How can one human move with such skill?" But it was not just skill. It was the bond, an unknown force they could not predict or counter. Ethan and Lyra moved faster than their sensors could track. Every attack they made was instinctive, precise, impossible to defend against. Finally, they reached the core of the flagship. Lyra's voice was calm, firm. "This ends now." Ethan gritted his teeth. "I'm ready." Together they struck. Lyra disabled the weapon systems while Ethan focused on the energy core. Using both his own intuition and the bond's guidance, he manipulated the ship's controls in ways no human could have imagined. Sparks flew, systems overloaded, and finally, the core imploded in a controlled detonation. The flagship shuddered, then collapsed into itself, sending out a shockwave that disabled the remaining ships in the fleet. They scattered, retreating into the darkness of space. The battle was over. Ethan sank into the command chair, exhausted but exhilarated. His hands trembled, the bond still pulsing faintly. Lyra stood beside him, her glowing eyes watching him carefully. "You did well," she said softly. "Better than I expected." Ethan laughed weakly. I didn't even know I could do that." "Humans are unpredictable," she replied. "That is why we underestimated you. That is why you succeeded." For the first time, Ethan felt pride, not just for himself, but for humanity. He had been chosen, yes, but it was his own instincts, courage, and willingness to act that had saved both Earth and the galaxy from disaster. He looked at Lyra. We really did it, didn't we?" She nodded, her gaze softening slightly. "Yes, together we did it." After the battle, the galaxy began to take notice. News of the human who had faced an alien warlord and survived spread quickly among the different worlds. Some saw him as a symbol of human potential, unpredictable and daring. Others were cautious, unsure if humans could be trusted. Ethan, however, did not have time to celebrate. The bond still pulsed strongly, reminding him of Lyra, of responsibility, of the lives he could not ignore. The next few weeks were filled with diplomatic visits. Humans on the galactic stage were now being watched carefully, and wherever Ethan went, whispers followed. The human who fought beside an Artheanai, the one chosen by the bond. But it was not just politics that mattered. Ethan and Lyra continued their training, refining the bond, learning how to move and act as one. The bond was no longer just a connection, It was a partnership. Ethan began to understand it deeply, feeling not just Lyra's thoughts but her intentions, her strategy, and occasionally her emotions. One evening, as they stood on the observation deck, looking out at the stars, Ethan spoke quietly. You know, I never thought I'd leave Earth, and now, everything. It feels right. In a strange way, Lyra glanced at him. I understand. I feel the same. The bond chose us, yes, but now, we choose how to use it, he nodded. And humans. Maybe we're not as weak as they think. Her glowing eyes softened. No, you are not. You are strong in ways we cannot always predict. Ethan smiled faintly, touching the ring on his hand. It was no longer a strange, frightening thing. It was a reminder of everything he had survived, everything he had learned, and everything he would face in the future. The final step came when they returned to Earth. The world below had recovered from the initial panic. Governments now approached Ethan not with fear, but with respect. He became a symbol, a human who had survived the stars and returned, a representative of what humanity could achieve. Standing beside Lyra, looking at the crowds below, Ethan realized something important. The bond had changed him. Not just giving him power, but teaching him courage, responsibility, and the value of action. The simple ring he had bought from a street vendor, something he had thought meaningless, was now the key that had opened the galaxy. And as he held Lyra's hand through the bond, he knew that humanity's first step into the stars had begun, not through war, not through conquest, but through courage, connection, and the unpredictable strength of a single human. Ethan Walker smiled, feeling the pulse of the bond. He was no longer just a mechanic, no longer just a human on Earth. He was a partner in the galaxy, a symbol of hope, and a proof that even the simplest choices like buying a ring could change everything. The stars stretched endlessly above him, full of danger, wonder, and possibilities. And for the first time, Ethan felt ready to face them, because he was no longer alone. Together with Lyra, and the bond that had chosen them, humanity had finally stepped into the wider universe, and nothing would ever be the same again.